Hello. Sorry for the early morning meeting after the longest night of the day, so I'll try to keep this light. So thank you, Lisa, for the introduction. I'm going to assume the button in the middle goes to the next slide. It does. All right, so I'll just give a intro to Indeed that we can talk about, and then we're going to explore our marketplace and what it is that we want to focus on, and then we'll dig into some specific examples about it so we can actually look at some real numbers, which is what I love. So at Indeed, we help people get jobs. That's what gets us out of bed in the morning and keeps us up at night, is what our CEO says. So it's definitely the first thing we care about the most here at Indeed. And speaking of our values, everything we do, we always think about job seeker first. Any action we take, how does it help a job seeker? Other than that, we also care about pay for performance, and what we mean by that is we don't want to get paid unless we're delivering value to our clients, which are employers who are posting jobs. So if no one ever gets a hire, we don't want to get paid because we're not doing our job. And I've never worked for a company that's more data driven than Indeed. I bet if all of you went to Indeed right now, each of you would probably be in a different A/B test. Like, we do thousands of them. It's nuts the amount of testing that we do, which leads to tons of innovation, which is a fun place to be in. And then, of course, inclusion and belonging, especially in the hiring field. Like, it's important for us to have as a diverse of staff as possible because people get hired from as diverse of backgrounds as possible. So it's important that we have that background so we know the pain that job seekers are going through. I also hate having to type in my resume after I've just uploaded my resume to job sites too. So we get it, we understand. And with that, really our goal is just trying to get as close to the hire as possible. So what we mean by that is everyone can go on Indeed right now and search for, a marketing manager position. That's great, we get some data from that, but we can't really match your information then of like, oh, what would be the best job for you then? If you clicked on a job, we get a little more information. Once you apply for a job, we get more information. If you have an interview, that's even better. And then ultimately, we would love to know every single hire that happens, because then we can tell, it's like, oh, this is the type of person that would get hired for that job. So we can take that for future mapping or matching in the future. So getting as close to the end state is our goal, but it's a little more difficult to get there. So we kind of, depending on which company we're working with, that's the level of data that we'll have. Ultimately, we want it to be as easy for a job seeker to push a button and then they can get a job, or for an employer to push a button and then they get a new hire. We're not there yet. It would be great to be there, but that's our end state of where we would love to be when it comes to a job seeker's journey. So kind of high level on Indeed, let's talk about like the marketplace itself and how Indeed fits in, because not everyone here is probably super familiar with this space. So as we mentioned, Indeed is the #1 job site in the world. Indeed reaches almost 93% of online US job seekers. We have 30 million jobs on Indeed right now. Over 350 million people use Indeed each month, and we operate in 60 plus countries and 28 different languages. So fairly large, definitely the biggest company I've worked for. So with stats like that, why do we bother marketing at all? So that's where kind of my team comes in. Is Indeed is this two-sided marketplace where these external factors can drive employers to either leave a market or have a super high demand. I'm sure you've all heard of healthcare shortages. If you know anyone who wants to be a nurse, you will get a job pretty easily right now. So definitely would recommend that. But job seekers can also have changes. In the pandemic, I moved to a small Colorado town because I could work remotely. So it's all these things can change, and it depends. It'll change the marketplace of, just because we have 350 million people and 30 million jobs, that doesn't mean they're in the right spots for where those demands are. So that's what we're trying to figure out, is how can we be more efficient with getting those matches, especially with our acquisition efforts. So let's dig into some specific examples, kind of the part I like to talk about, because this is my day-to-day. So we're going to look at a couple different segments, and when I refer to a segment, that's an occupation plus a location. In this case, a location is a US city. So we're going to look at recruiters and staffing in Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to look at solar and energy sales reps in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we're going to look at first line managers, which are the people in the restaurant who do the day-to-day work and make restaurants run in 6 different cities across the US. So this is year-over-year growth for recruiters and staffing in Atlanta, Georgia, and solar and energy sales reps in Charlotte, North Carolina. The metric we look at is job seekers per job. That's kind of like a core metric that we use when we talk about balance. So you can see kind of a similar trend in both of these. Both have more than doubled in the past year, August versus August. So you might think, oh, like these 2 segments are experiencing the same thing. There's an increase in the amount of job seekers, so we should treat these 2 segments the same. That is very much not true, that we'll find out. So we also not only need to see the segments, but understand like the why of what's driving these trends in these segments as well. So recruiters and staffing in Atlanta, Georgia. If we look at job seekers last year, we had about 6,000 job seekers. If we look at job seekers this year, again, about 6,000 job seekers, only a 2% drop, so essentially flat for the amount of job seekers. If we look at jobs though, we went from 442 available jobs in August of last year to only 112 jobs in August of 2023. It's a 75% drop. So definitely a reason for why we have more job seekers per job. We didn't get any more new job seekers. We just lost, 3/4 of the available jobs in Atlanta, Georgia. Compare that to solar and energy sales reps. We went from 802 job seekers to 2,300 job seekers in a year. So that is a huge growth in the amount of job seekers there, but essentially the same amount of jobs. So if you know any solar and energy sales reps, tell them not to move to Charlotte right now, because we already have a pretty big imbalance. So what do we do about it? Well, there's not a ton we can do for the recruiters and staffing in Atlanta, Georgia right now. We definitely wouldn't want to try and acquire any new job seekers because there's already a huge drop in the amount of jobs available. And it's going to be a really tough ask on our sales team to ask them to like, hey, can you get some more recruiter jobs in Atlanta? As we all know, not a lot of people hiring right now in general. So it's going to be hard to get more new recruiting jobs in Atlanta. So that's an area where we would probably just pull back a lot of our efforts for now until the external marketplace changes and we can reevaluate. It's definitely a different story for solar and energy sales reps. This is an exciting area because it's not like we've done a ton of focused marketing effort to get more people in Charlotte interested in that. It's been mostly organic growth. So this is a great opportunity for our sales teams to go out and say like, hey, if you know of any employers in Charlotte that are thinking about posting a job on Indeed, this would be the time for them to post because was it 185% increase in the amount of job seekers there? Also, maybe we might work on product changes of, hey, let's see what other skills you might have. Like, sure, you want to work on solar sales, but are there other sales that maybe we have not enough job seekers in that we could encourage those job seekers to apply for? So definitely like the same trend, but 2 very different reasons and 2 very different things we'd recommend to our marketing teams. When we look at first line managers across the US, we're going to explore 6 different cities. I tried to map them as best as I could, so these locations are approximate, I will say. So sorry if anyone's near these areas and I didn't quite get it right. But yeah, so this is, again, that job seeker per job metric year over year. So I kind of highlighted Los Angeles here. We went from 5.5 job seekers per job to 15.2 job seekers per job. So again, first line managers in Los Angeles, maybe look at moving would be the recommendation right now. And maybe tell them to move to Mesa, Arizona, because right now we have 0.2 job seekers per job. So if you know of any restaurant managers, Fort Wayne, Indiana, or Mesa, Arizona would be a great place to move right now. So this is kind of a new area for us at Indeed, really, is looking at this granular of a level of saying like, because normally we would have a food service industry campaign, and it would just be nationwide would be our targeting, and things would just shake out as they do. But on this focus on efficiency and worrying about the balance, this is great information for our team, so that way they can know of, I think I mentioned it here, let's deprioritize Los Angeles. Like there isn't really a reason that we should do any new job seeker acquisition. We're already at 15 job seekers per job. So any new job seekers we're adding in Los Angeles, they're going to have a bad time because it's a very competitive marketplace, and we're going to make a worse experience for the job seekers who are already there because it's just going to get even harder for them to find a job. But in Mesa, Arizona and Fort Wayne, it's essentially there aren't enough job seekers for the jobs right now. So any amount of job seekers we can add there, I'm not going to say they're guaranteed to get a job, but it'll be much easier than it would be in Los Angeles, California. So in that case, it'd be like, hey, let's increase our budgets in Arizona and Indiana and maybe decrease in California. So what does this mean for Indeed? Well, that's where my team comes in. So we've explored 3 occupations in 7 cities. Indeed operates in 60 countries with 30 million jobs. And I did a query for it. That would be about 510 million segments if we did it at that granular level. And for some reason, my marketing team doesn't want to manage that when I say like, hey, we should do this specific targeting. So we have to find those opportunities to where there's a large enough imbalance, but also a large enough opportunity size to make it worth it to spend the effort on it. We would love to target all 510 of those with unique messaging and just unique budgets based on the conditions, but it's just not feasible for us to do it at that scale at this moment. So it's really just finding what's the biggest opportunity, how can we group the segments together so maybe we can treat those the same that are supply constrained versus demand constrained. And I know search is the focus here, but marketing is our most straightforward solution, but we have a lot of other areas that I work with too. So like product change is actually a great one to where if we have a lot of, like we said, solar and energy sales reps in Charlotte, we know what kind of skills someone who applies to that job has. So we can look at, okay, what are the other jobs in Charlotte that have a similar skill set but don't have enough job seekers? So when those job seekers come to Indeed, we can start recommending those jobs more in their feed. And that way we're not necessarily acquiring any new job seekers, but we're shifting where the existing job seekers are looking to apply. Also, outside of just additional new job seeker acquisition, we have tons and tons of data about, oh, this person came to Indeed 3 years ago and for some reason hasn't come back in a while. It's probably safe to assume they had a job, but now might be a great time to reach out to them if they're in one of these high demand areas, and we can say like, hey, your job's in high demand right now. Come over to Indeed and see what it looks like to apply for a new job. So there's a lot of opportunities. Like I said, marketing generally is the most straightforward one, so that's a big focus for us now as we can go and say like, hey, Fort Wayne, Indiana, increase our search budgets there because we know any new job seeker is going to have a great time at getting a new job. But we have a lot of other levers that we can pull as well. I think I went pretty quick through this, but does anyone have any questions?
Do we have any questions?
Just curious, like when you see those big influxes, are those, Brandt with NBC Universal, are those generally like job loss in the area, like a big company layoff, things like that? Or when and how do you see some of those big flux?
Yeah, it definitely depends. Like there's definitely no one answer to that. Like the solar and energy sales reps, my manager is annoyed with me because I've brought that up every single time because that's like Myers, like what the heck is growing this like demand here? Because we see that across the country. I don't know if it's just like green energy is like the hot thing, so people are looking for that. But I mean, the tech industry in particular is one where we've definitely seen that the past year be pretty impacted, and we can kind of track that to like, oh, the Spotify layoffs or like the Meta layoffs, we can see those trends. But sometimes we don't know why like some of those are happening. So it definitely depends. You can see some cases, but not often the other. But that is the fun thing of like, on my laptop right now, I can query that and like check each of these cities to see where those trends are. But yeah, it's an interesting data set. But yeah, no like one reason for what causes those.
Anyone else have a question?
Oh. Yes, yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you actually, speaking of that data, because you talked about obviously you don't want to go too granular because then it's obviously too much. But I think there's a fine line even when you're talking with people, because can you get too specific? Even say okay, we don't go to LA, but by doing that you're losing possibility. Like how much is too much?
Yeah, and two, I'm on the product end, so for me, it's like, oh, like, let's do the 510 million segments, but it's definitely trying to find that balance. Because to be fair, there are segments to where it's like, oh, there were 8 new job seekers this month. That's a 900% growth. It's like, okay, but it was 8 people. So it's, yeah, we don't have a great way of like, this is the threshold for when is it actionable versus not yet. And two, one of the things we have to worry about is just how do we classify a job seeker as solar and energy sales reps? Because we see it, probably not necessarily in this group, but people jump careers pretty often. And like, honestly, like a teacher might also apply for a evening restaurant manager. So it's like, do we classify them as a teacher or do we classify them as a restaurant manager? So those are some of the things we have to think about when we do that as well. But yeah, it's, right now, generally, we sort by size, like total size, and kind of work our way down is how we come up with okay, what's the most actionables first. But yeah, not a set of, oh, once it hits these conditions, then it's actionable. If it's not, it isn't. It's a new area for just this focus on the balance. So we're still learning as we go.
Anyone else? All right, Burton, that was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.